This was a unique week to evaluate the passing game for the Philadelphia Eagles. In previous weeks, it could easily be kind of like, rationalized that part of the downward trend in the rushing or passing attempts was due to the increase in the rushing attempts, because why in the world would you want to take the ball to Saquon Barkley's hands?
There. And Barkley turns the corner, and there he goes!
And he just really had the hot hand. Defenses just really could not stop him. It made sense, right, to say, like, okay, we're installing a somewhat newer concept, newer system. There's still elements left over from the previous regime, previous scheme. But nonetheless, we are seeing Kellen Moore's flavor added to it. There seems to be, we don't know for 100% certainty, right? We do know that stylistically, there's still parts of that early Tom Brady, New England Patriots, Charlie Weiss. I already talked about this in previous video, guys. You get elements of that Earhart-Perkins system, but we don't know the language base. We can't definitively say that the language base is Earhart-Perkins, what's on the play sheets, okay? Just stylistically, that's that power run game kind of mixed in a little bit with the under center play action type passing stuff, moving those linebackers up to open up the field a little bit. So, that part's all there. We can clearly see that. We know that the spread stuff, whether you're running Kellen Moore spread, Nick's spread, which, to be honest with you, Nick's spread concepts aren't Nick's. They're really Kevin Patullo's. But no matter how you look at this, yesterday's game in particular was different. It was different because, like, previously you could easily sit there and say, like, rationally speaking, this is a new system. This is probably a newer language, just judging by some of the struggles we had earlier in the year with the play clock and kind of what was going on, how late we were getting down into the snap counts before hiking the ball. Those are all things that would lead us to say, we don't know 100%, but it seems to be pretty good indicators of what we're dealing with here. Yesterday, I can't explain what happened in terms of the passing game, because it did not feel like this was solely based upon being uncomfortable in the system per se. There are other games, and we could do further breakdowns, guys, where I can show you where, just my experience playing the position and coaching a lot of guys, within this position. I can show you plays throughout the season where it felt like the quarterback was uncomfortable with the system. That's not the vibe I got without seeing the All-22, to be fair yet, guys. I've not been able to watch the coach's film quite yet. But that's not the vibe I got watching it live. It felt more, I hate to say it because every broadcaster has said it, it felt like a more concerted, conservative effort to not turn the ball over. Instead of going out there to win a game, don't lose the game. That's what it kind of felt like. And when I'm judging these things to where I don't have access to the All-22 yet, I probably won't get it until later tonight, early tomorrow, is normally when it kind of gets released for me. When I don't have that yet, there are a few things I like to go to from the analytics to set myself up for what I want to dig down to in terms of, like, looking at the All-22 and the coach's film to pinpoint certain plays. Now, the first thing, and I've said this a million times, guys, and I'll just restate it again just in case you're new to the channel, you always want to go and you want to look at the actual play-by-play, and you want to earmark those plays and get a feel for kind of like the way the drives were ebbing and flowing. It's always good to kind of have that in your back pocket as you watch the game live, follow along with the play-by-play sheet, and then easily you can earmark to go back and look. But let's get into the analytics part of kind of trying to decipher this crap. There are three things specifically from an analytics standpoint that I like to look at. A time to throw marker, the aggression rating, and then your air yards to the sticks. In previous years, I used to use things like Alex. Alex was a marker on third down specifically in terms of where you're throwing it towards the sticks, because I do think that throwing the ball short of the sticks on third down is different from first down, to be quite honest. With that said, unfortunately, we kind of lost the ability to do Alex because the company folded up that once ran that program. So, time to throw. I will preface this by saying, understand that there are some nuances to these conversations, okay? System and scheme matter when you're looking at things like time to throw. If you are running a West Coast offense, especially a West Coast offense that is primarily operated out of shotgun and doesn't use a ton of RPO, that's probably going to lend to being a much faster processing, system. Even some under center kind of drop back systems, if they're three-step primarily drop backs, the ball's going to come out pretty fast, to be quite honest. Like West Coast, the way that works between coordinator and quarterback, and believe me, there's some really big names out there who do not have a lot of autonomy at the line of scrimmage like people think they do. Joe Burrow's in a West Coast system. Mahomes is in a West Coast system. Right now, you have you have a few guys that are kind of playing in these weird kind of combo systems. Most of teams are playing some form of combo, but I mean, where you have like a really non-traditional setup, guys, to where, you got the Shanahan, you got the McVay stuff. Those guys are playing in what would be the borders and the boundaries of a West Coast, but it's not purely a West Coast system. Like, it's kind of this weird West Coast under center system with wide zone kind of built in there. So, when you look at guys like Brock Purdy, when you look at guys, like Matthew Stafford, when you look at some of these guys to where maybe they're not using as much play action passing with their backs turned to the defense or deep 5 to 7 step drops, then their numbers are going to look a little different from other systems and other schemes that do. But when you hit a marker of 3.47, which was the longest in the entire NFL in terms of time to throw yesterday. That's high for Jalen Hurts, to be honest with you. Like, I do expect Jalen to be around, the higher 2.7s all the way down to like 3.10. To me, if he's in that area between the high 2.7s and I would say into like the low 3.1s, that's within the realm of normal, depending on the way the game folds, right? How the game plays out, how much we're under center, how much RPO stuff we're doing where Jalen's got to read multiple things before he makes a decision with the ball. There's a lot of things like that can kind of tie you up a little bit and can skew those numbers, right? I mean, pistol versus offset versus under center, things like that can definitely skew it. And to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, guys, if you look at Bryce Young, right? Younger guy, still working through processing, 3.19 seconds yesterday. Sam Darnold, a guy who actually does work in one of those McVay-Shanahan trees, 3.06 time to throw, right? Josh Allen, 3.02. Drew Lock, 3.21. Jordan Love, 3.22. You get my point, guys. Scheme and system matter, but even in saying that, 3.47 was high. Something was going on. I don't know yet. I can't tell you definitively without seeing the All-22, but that's my first marker. Something happened here. This is above, even for a guy like Jalen, who's never going to be like a 2.5, 2.4, that really quick processing. That's not going to be his game. That's high for him. Even for Jalen, it's a really high number. Aggression rating. Your aggression rating is how often you're throwing into windows that are essentially less than a yard in terms of the coverage on them, right? Contested tight window throws, if you will, okay? Sometimes these are good, sometimes these are bad. If you're not making mistakes with the football and you're completing passes, then it could be looked upon as like, hey man, that guy's throwing tight window throws here. He's cooking today. Ultimately, though, you do want to be a little careful. Like, if you're constantly up there high in the numbers, it's not good. Yesterday, it was 19%. 3.47 second time to throw with a 19% aggression rating, which is pretty high, to be quite honest. Other quarterbacks around similar, ratings as Jalen Hurts. You had Sam Darnold, who was 17.9%, so basically 1.1 percentage points lower in terms of that throwing into a, they call a 1 yard window. Stafford had 20%. Justin Herbert had 20%. So those are the quarterbacks that had similar aggression ratings to Jalen Hurts on Sunday. But here's where I think it tells you what's going on a little bit, right? It's never one thing. It's all things together. Air yards to the sticks. Air yards to the sticks is a measurement on average of the 21 throws that he made. How close were they to the sticks on average? And for Jalen Hurts yesterday, it was negative 4.9, which was the closest to the line of scrimmage or the furthest away from the sticks in terms of the entire NFL. Now, I will point this out. Just because you have a low rating, now I'm not talking about when you have 4.9, guys, that's really, really low. Like, there was definitely some checkdowns here. But I'm talking about when you have like a negative 0.7, negative 1.3, negative even 1.92-ish. Sometimes that can be because you're playing behind the sticks, if that makes sense, guys, right? Like, you had a false start, so now you're 1st and 15. You had a holding penalty, so you're 1st and 20. Things like that can skew the number, so be careful. But now we're talking about negative 4.9. That's a little different. Similar quarterbacks with those ratings yesterday. Geno Smith, negative 4.4. Tua, negative 3.1. Jared Goff, negative 2.6. The last thing that I'll bring up here about assessing the passing game from yesterday. it's always helpful to go see the spray chart, guys. Like I said, start off with, essentially, you want to start off and you want to take a look at rewatch the tape again and watch your play-by-play. And then when you get done seeing that and you're earmarking some plays, now you want to go through and you want to look at your time to throw, you want to look at your aggression ratings, and then you also want to take a look at, essentially, your air yards to the sticks. And the final piece of the puzzle I'll give you, the final piece of helpful information to assess kind of where this offense is and where it has to grow. Because make no mistakes about it, guys. No matter how you feel about Jalen Hurts, you guys know that I personally like Jalen Hurts a lot. I do think he's a really good quarterback. He had a really bad game yesterday. There's just no denying that. It was a bad game. With that said, I'm always looking to the aspects of, I know this guy, for me, this is the quarterback of the Eagles. That's not changing anytime soon, in my opinion. So, we got to grow the passing game. It's I could care less about 150 yards versus 250 yards versus 350 yards. To me, that's all irrelevant. Game flow dictates some of these things. However, when I'm looking at the finer details in the analytics to how the passing game is performing, that's where it gets different, right? Like I said, in previous weeks, we can say, a little uncomfortability with the scheme. Why would you take the ball out of Saquon Barkley's hands? It just doesn't make sense. You heard A.J. Brown, you heard a lot of these guys say that earlier on in the weeks. Like, I mean, what do you want to do? I mean, this guy's, working at a historic rate. He's about to set a league record here. Like, he just set the franchise record yesterday. Like, obviously this guy's going to warrant touches right now because defenses cannot figure out how to stop him. Yesterday was different, though, from the quarterback and the passing game perspective. The week before, there was definitely some issues in terms of route development from the players. Obviously with, Dallas Goedert going down in that game, DeVonta Smith not playing in the game prior. Obviously, like, younger guys kind of filling in there. There were some spacing issues to where I don't know if somebody had an option route or if they just really missed the landmark for where they're supposed to be on the field in terms of the top of the route stem. But there were some issues on the tape last week to where you had guys in the same spot. That wasn't this past week, though. Yesterday. It's not what happened yesterday. It's a little different from what I saw. Now, I haven't seen the 22 yet, so I will hold some judgment there, but it felt different to me. And I will maintain to you, I'm a little different in the way that I judge quarterbacks compared to other people, right? I mean, you heard Tom Brady even give an explanation about it's about getting the team into the right play call, right? It's about making sure if you're the coaching staff, right? And it's about making sure that you have the team prepared correctly for the concepts that they are going to see in game. And that kind of leads me to what my hunch is. After I take a look at the spray chart, which is the next big thing that can be viewed to get a definite of, okay, how many balls were thrown around the line of scrimmage, essentially. The next thing you really want to know, guys, is was there something that tripped us up? Now, I don't recall seeing anything that was disguised, incredibly well from Carolina. I just think that J.C. Horn had a pretty dang good game. This was someone that a lot of us were high on here in Philadelphia. This was a young man that has a lot of height. He's got a lot of reach. He's kind of, he's lanky. He's got that length that he can play the cornerback position with. And I thought that, if you're not, sometimes the windows to throw in the NFL are really contested. And if you are not, I'm talking about less than tenths of a second if you're off, guys, with your footwork and your delivery of the football, that motion. You got a guy like J.C. Horn out there, he can break the pass up on you. And we saw that happen a couple times in yesterday's game. So there's these little things here that are making me wonder, like, I wonder if what they prepped for, what they were expecting Carolina to do, was not what they got in game. Because there were definitely route concepts that I saw just from the TV copy where I'm like, I can't tell you 1,000% what the progressions are from the quarterback without seeing the full 22. I need to see the 22. I need to see the coverage, and I need to see all the route concepts, and I can give you a pretty good idea from my own experience in time. I can tell you kind of the way normally you would play that coverage, how the ball would go out normally. We don't know how they coach it ultimately, guys, but most of us all kind of stick to the same. The progressions don't change as much as people think. I'm wondering if there was a mix-up in terms of, like, Carolina threw them a wrench in terms of the way that they played the back seven. They were expecting something completely different from Carolina than what they got in the back seven. That's where I'm going to kind of probably seek out once I get access to the tape, guys. Once I get access to kind of some of more of the analytics as they kind of roll out from PFF and other organizations, just to kind of look at things like man versus zone coverages over the last few games. Kind of like, was there a switch up here with Carolina? Then I'm going to see the tape and I want to see what the shells were. Too high, single high, or how were they open in the middle of the field? Were they closing the middle of the field off? What was the cushions that were being afforded to the receivers? I want to see these type of things. I want to see if something looked different on the tape from Carolina in previous games compared to this game. To me, it's weird to miss some of those throws, man. Like, it wasn't that, I'm not going to say that he missed them. He just opted not to throw them. And some of it has to do with our protection. That's a discussion for another day when we can break it down. I don't think we had the best game in terms of our pass protection here. And that's not, Jalen still had opportunities, to be quite fair about this. But you could definitely tell that Jalen was starting to get a little bit of happy feet in this game. And the protection was not as good as it has been in previous weeks. Look, I'm not about to sit here and cook the protection because it was one game. It was one game where we weren't bad. We just weren't great. We weren't dominating like we normally are. That's kind of a tough one, man, because, they've been so good for so many weeks. Like, they had one off game. They just got done with a game where they had to play the Ravens. Now you're coming and you're playing Carolina, which is a team that's deceptively better than what people thought. If people have been looking, they would have realized that they have won. I think they're now 2-3 since November, but their 3 losses, which are 3 in a row, have all been by less than 7 points. Right? They've all been against really good competition and by less than 7 points. I think people are kind of forgetting that Carolina started to play a little better. It's one of those weird situations where they detracted some of the skill set. They've lost some of their players, but they're playing better as a team overall. So, I don't know if that caught us off guard being between the Baltimore game and looking forward to having to get ready to play that Pittsburgh game. And now you got this team that's kind of getting right at the right time. Right? They're not going to make a playoff push, but I'm talking about building culture for years to come. Perhaps they're starting to get that in Carolina again, to where, okay, we had to detract over the last couple of years. We've lost CMC. Cam Newton went to the Patriots and then retired. And, now we got this young man in here and Bryce Young. And we're starting to build that culture again. We're building a new culture. And I think we just got caught right in the tailwind of that crap, to be quite honest. There's some things that got to get ironed out, guys, against teams like Pittsburgh, against teams like, Detroit, against teams like Minnesota. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we will or won't win a game because circumstance. Like, we can look at it from our circumstance, but we don't know the other team's circumstance. So that's the thing, is like, circumstance works both ways. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all's time and attention. I'm going to end this by saying I've told you guys this so many times about the way that I like to judge quarterbacks and what I think is the sweet spot for quarterbacks. I think between 26 and 32 attempts is where you're not detracted from the quarterback being a part of your offense, but you're also not ridiculously heavily relying on this guy throwing the ball 40, 50 times a game. It's like this sweet spot, right? Anything over 34 is normally considered to be pretty much placing the ball in the quarterback's hands. Anything under normally 24 attempts, you're limiting the quarterback. To me, when you get between 26 and 32 attempts, that's the sweet spot for where you got a really good marriage between your run game, your pass game. You're kind of cooking with fuel offensively. The last 3 games, it's been 22, 19, 21. You take those 3 games, you average them out, it's 20 attempts. This is where it gets tough, guys. We can't be cute for being cute's sake. What I mean by that is, we're struggling a little bit passing the ball, so let's make it a point of emphasis to try to get cute with throwing the ball. When Saquon and this offensive line's out there taking the souls of people. We're in a weird position here because, we definitely know we need advancements. They got to get in the film room, guys. A lot of this is going to have to come from tape. It's going to have to come from film, to be quite honest. They need to have some reps, of course, built in. You can uptick the passing a little bit. I'm not trying to get cute here, guys. I'm talking about going from 20 attempts a game to maybe moving it to 24 to 26 attempts a game. The ball still needs to be in Saquon's hands. And some of the ways that we might be able to do this is just simply by producing more possessions or longer sustaining drives early in games. I do think that the nature of how we're starting the football games is kind of skewing some of these details and is messing some up a little bit, right? I do think there are games that if we were on the field longer, we were sustaining the drives, and we were putting points up on the board, I do think that Jalen's attempts would be closer to that 24 number than that 20 number in terms of the averages. That's my thoughts, man. I don't know. I'll have more answers, guys, when I can see the all 22. Right now, I'm guessing like you're guessing, guys. I'm just telling you how I'm looking at it. I got 5 points that I kind of look at when it just comes specifically to quarterback play, guys. Watch the tape again. and then you got to clock it in terms of the game by the play-by-play. Go to your time to throw. Look at your aggression rating. Okay, look at your air yards to the sticks, and then look at your spread chart. You want to see your spread chart for quarterbacks, guys. All this stuff can pretty much be found on Next Gen Stats and, of course, ESPN for the play-by-play. And you need NFL Plus to get the All 22 when that comes out, or you need it for also to do unless you taped it yourself, to watch it again. Sometimes you can get it on. Sometimes they do put full games up on YouTube. You can find them. Normally those are a couple of years old, though, to be quite honest. I gotta wait till I see it, guys. I don't know. Judging from what I can see from watching the tape a second time and using those 5 points to guide me, I'm expecting to see that something caught them about their coverage. I mean, look, J.C. Horn had an individually good game. I'm not going to take that away from him. But I think something caught them about the coverage. I think something was unexpected in the coverage realm that messed them up a little bit. Because there were just opportunities that weren't taken that made no sense to have bypassed on, unless you got confused on what you were seeing and you weren't expecting to see what you saw. And then you just, you flopped out there on it, to be quite honest, on those particular situations. I will say this, man. I trust Jalen Hurts to get things right. I trust the offensive line to get things right. I think Jalen's been struggling in the last 3 or 4 weeks, to be quite honest, in terms of not really struggling per se, but I think the opportunities have not afforded themselves as well. And I do think that when we need Jalen to make a play, that's the great thing about Jalen. That's why I have to keep co-signing him. When we need the play, the guy finds the play. Simply put. The offensive line, I think that was a little bit of a, it was a slip up. I would be really shocked if we have a repeat performance like, yesterday again. I would be pretty shocked if we had that in consecutive weeks, because our offensive line is pretty good. I mean, we've sustained injuries to the left tackle, right guard, right tackle, and just kept rolling. I mean, I think it was just one of those things, guys. I think it was one of these anomalies. Let's hope it's an anomaly at least. All right, y'all. Peace. I'll see y'all later.